First contact protocols. The massive alien ship hung in space like a metal moon, casting shadows across Earth's surface. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Luna station, watching the vessel that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Her hands were steady as she reviewed her notes, but inside her chest her heart hammered against her ribs. "They're requesting permission to dock," reported Lieutenant Commander Hayes from the communications station. His voice carried the tension that everyone felt, but no one spoke about. "Granted," Sarah replied. She smoothed down her simple blue diplomatic suit, chosen specifically to appear non-threatening. Everything about this first meeting had been planned to make humanity seem harmless, peaceful, and most importantly, weak. The alien delegation that stepped through the airlock was impressive and intimidating. The Kethvar were tall, standing, nearly 8 feet high with broad shoulders and thick scaled skin that gleamed under the station's lights. Their leader, who introduced himself as High Commander Vexkar, looked down at Sarah with what she could only describe as amusement. "So, you are the leaders of this small world," Vexkar said, his voice translated by the universal communication device they had provided. "How quaint." Sarah forced herself to smile. "Welcome to our system, High Commander. We are honored by your visit." The alien's laugh was like gravel falling down a metal chute. "Honored? Yes, I suppose you would be." He gestured to his companions, equally large beings carrying weapons that hummed with energy. "We represent the Galactic Hegemony, the coalition of the strongest species in this galaxy. We have come to inform you of how things work in civilized space." For the next 3 hours, Sarah listened as the aliens explained the new reality. Earth was now under the protection of the hegemony. Humans could trade with approved species, but only through hegemony channels. They could explore their local star systems, but only within designated boundaries. Any expansion beyond their solar system required permission. "Of course, we understand you are a young species," Vexkar said, his tone like a parent speaking to a slow child. "You have not yet learned the ways of galactic society. We will be patient with your limitations." Sarah nodded humbly. "We appreciate your guidance. Perhaps we could discuss the specific boundaries of our permitted space?" The High Commander waved a dismissive hand. "Your star system and perhaps the next closest one, nothing more. You have no military to speak of, no advanced technology, no colonies beyond this small rock. You hardly need more space than that." Behind her professional smile, Sarah filed away every word. The aliens had spent considerable time scanning their solar system, and their report was exactly what Earth's leaders had hoped for. They had seen only the civilian stations, the basic mining operations on Mars, the simple research outposts. They had completely missed the military installations hidden in the asteroid belt, the advanced manufacturing facilities built inside hollowed-out asteroids, and the fleet of ships that waited in the dark spaces between planets. "We have some concerns about resource rights," Sarah said carefully. "There are valuable minerals in the outer system that we have been exploring." Vexkar's second-in-command, a female Kethvar named Jalara, stepped forward. "Any resources in your system belong to you, of course, but remember, humans, that the hegemony takes 20% of all extracted materials as a protection fee." "Protection from what?" asked Dr. Martinez, Earth's chief scientist and part of the diplomatic team. The aliens exchanged looks that might have been amusement. "From species like us," Vexkar said bluntly. "There are many in the galaxy who would simply take your world and enslave your population. We prevent this. 20% is a small price for your continued existence." Sarah's jaw ached from keeping her expression neutral. "We understand. And what happens if other species try to challenge this arrangement?" "They won't," Jalara said with absolute confidence. "The hegemony controls the strongest military forces in the galaxy. Our ships can destroy planets. Our weapons can turn stars into supernovas. No one challenges us." Twice, Dr. Martinez leaned forward with what appeared to be scientific curiosity. "How large is your military, if you don't mind sharing such information?" Vexkar puffed up with obvious pride. "The hegemony commands over 10,000 battlecruisers, each one capable of destroying a planet's surface. We have conquered 47 different species across the galaxy. Your little world with its single moon would not even require a full battle group to subdue. Sarah made notes on her tablet, appearing to record the impressive numbers. In reality, she was sending coded signals to Earth's military command. Every piece of information the aliens revealed was being analyzed by the best strategic minds humanity had produced. The negotiations continued for 2 more days. The aliens were generous with information, clearly seeing no threat in sharing military secrets with what they viewed as a primitive species. They spoke openly about their patrol routes, their base locations, their alliance structures. They even provided star charts showing hegemony territory and the locations of other protected species like humanity. On the final day, Sarah presented Earth's formal acceptance of hegemony protection. The document was humble, grateful, and carefully worded to make humanity seem both honored and slightly fearful of their new protectors. "This is wise," Vexcar said as he reviewed the agreement. "Your species shows proper respect for their betters. This will serve you well in galactic society." As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Jalara paused beside Sarah. "You should know that not all species are as generous as the hegemony. There are pirates, raiders, and rogue nations that might test your defenses. If you have any military vessels, keep them close to your world. Don't venture beyond your assigned boundaries or you might encounter something you cannot handle." Sarah bowed slightly. "We understand. We are grateful for your protection and guidance." The massive alien ship departed as impressively as it had arrived, leaving Luna Station in its shadow before accelerating away in a display of advanced propulsion technology. Sarah watched until it disappeared, then turned to her team. "How did we do?" Dr. Martinez asked quietly. Sarah's diplomatic mask finally slipped, revealing an expression of cold satisfaction. "Perfectly. They think we're helpless primitives grateful for their scraps. They have no idea what they just walked into." In the depths of space beyond Pluto's orbit, Admiral Rebecca Stone received Sarah's coded transmission from the bridge of the stealth dreadnought UES Defiance. The ship was invisible to alien sensors, hidden by technology that made hegemony stealth systems look like children's toys. "Signal all dark fleets," she ordered. "Begin Phase 2. Our new friends have given us everything we need to know about galactic politics." Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Through the view screen, stars dotted the darkness, each one potentially hiding worlds under hegemony control. Soon, very soon, that would change. But for now, Earth would continue to play the role of the grateful primitive species. The aliens expected politeness and humility from humanity, and that's exactly what they would receive. Right up until the moment Earth decided that politeness was no longer required. The game had begun, and the galactic hegemony had no idea they had just made first contact with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They only thought they had found another victim to protect and exploit. They would learn differently soon enough. Escalating tensions. 3 months after first contact, Captain Jake Morrison received the distress call while his merchant vessel was hauling refined metals between Earth and Mars. The message was brief and filled with static, but the words made his blood run cold. "This is cargo ship Prosperity, under attack by unknown vessels. They're demanding we surrender our cargo. Please respond." The transmission cut to silence. Jake stared at his communication console, knowing that another human ship had just been lost to pirates. It was the 4th attack this month, and Earth's government seemed powerless to stop it. "Should we investigate, Captain?" asked his co-pilot, Elena Vasquez. Jake shook his head grimly. "By the time we get there, there won't be anything left to find." He had seen the aftermath of pirate attacks before. Ships stripped clean, crews either dead or taken as slaves, no trace left behind except floating debris. When Jake returned to Earth, he filed his report with the Colonial Defense Ministry, just like the captains of the other attacked ships had done. The response was always the same polite acknowledgement and assurance that the matter was being investigated through proper diplomatic channels. But Jake knew better. His brother worked in government communications, and Jake had learned that Earth's complaints to the galactic hegemony were being ignored or dismissed as unimportant. The aliens who had promised to protect humanity seemed to care very little when humans actually needed protection. The situation got worse when the Zelani Republic, a minor member of the Hegemony Alliance, claimed the asteroid belt in the Alpha Centauri system. Human miners had been working those asteroids for 2 years, building facilities and extracting valuable rare earth metals. The Zelani arrived with a small military escort and simply announced that the system now belonged to them. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Earth's new ambassador to the hegemony, filed formal protests through proper channels. The response came back within a week. The Zelani had prior claim to the system based on ancient exploration rights that predated human space travel by centuries. "It's complete nonsense," Dr. Warren told the emergency session of the World Council. "The Zelani never set foot in that system before we arrived. They're just taking it because they know we can't fight back." President Jackson rubbed his temples as he studied the reports. "What are our options?" "Officially, we accept their decision and withdraw our people," Warren replied. "The hegemony has made it clear that challenging member species could result in the loss of our protection status." And unofficially, Warren glanced around the secure conference room before speaking. "Our mining operations in Alpha Centauri were never just about minerals. The facilities we built there had secondary purposes that the Zelani don't know about. We're evacuating our people, but we're leaving behind some surprises." President Jackson didn't ask for details. There were some things he preferred not to know officially. Within a month of the Zelani takeover, strange things began happening throughout their new territory. Equipment malfunctioned at critical moments. Computer systems developed mysterious glitches that took days to repair. Ships arrived to find mining stations completely powered down with no explanation. The problems weren't serious enough to cause major damage, but they made operations expensive and frustrating. The Zelani blamed human sabotage, but when they searched the abandoned human facilities, they found nothing suspicious. Earth's government expressed concern and offered to send technical advisors to help resolve the problems. The Zelani declined, not wanting human help with systems they had stolen from humans. Meanwhile, across human space, subtle changes were taking place that no alien observer would have noticed. Mining operations on Mars were scaled back, with equipment and personnel quietly transferred to deep space research projects. The asteroid belt facilities that aliens had cataloged during their first visit began reporting reduced activity, their operations apparently winding down as resources were exhausted. Captain Sarah Kim, commander of the research vessel New Horizons, filed routine reports about her ship's mission to study cosmic radiation in the outer solar system. Her reports were boring, technical, and completely fabricated. In reality, the New Horizons was a military intelligence ship monitoring alien communications and tracking the movement of every hegemony vessel that passed through human space. "We're picking up increased chatter in the Rigel sector," reported her communications officer. "Looks like the hegemony is dealing with some kind of territorial dispute with the Vorthon Collective." Sarah studied the intercepted transmissions on her command screen. The hegemony's translation of the messages made interesting reading. Two powerful alien species were preparing for a possible war over resource rights in a distant star system. Neither side seemed particularly concerned about the impact on smaller species caught between them. "How many civilian populations in the disputed zone?" she asked. "At least 12 different species," her tactical officer replied. "Most of them are protected status like us. The hegemony and the Vorthons are basically using them as bargaining chips." Sarah filed the information in her daily intelligence report. Earth's military command was building a comprehensive picture of galactic politics, and the picture wasn't pretty. The so-called protection offered by the hegemony was more like a protection racket. Small species paid tribute and followed orders, while their protectors made deals with their territories and populations like pieces on a game board. The breaking point in human-alien relations came when pirates attacked a human passenger liner traveling between Earth and the Mars colonies. The ship Harmony carried 500 civilians, including families and children, traveling to new homes in the outer colonies. The pirates didn't just steal cargo this time. They took prisoners. Ambassador Warren's emergency communication to the hegemony was answered by a low-level bureaucrat who expressed sympathy for humanity's loss. but explained that piracy was a common problem in space. The hegemony could not be expected to patrol every shipping lane to protect every minor species from every possible threat. "What about our people who were taken?" Warren demanded during the video call. The alien official made a gesture that might have been a shrug. "Pirates sell prisoners to labor colonies in the Outer Rim territories. If your species wishes to purchase their freedom, you are welcome to negotiate directly with their captors. The hegemony cannot become involved in private, commercial transactions." Warren's hands shook with rage as she ended the call. 200 human beings had been kidnapped and sold into slavery, and their supposed protectors considered it a private commercial transaction. That night, President Jackson authorized Operation Deep Survey. Within hours, ships began launching from hidden bases throughout the solar system. To any alien observers, they appeared to be research vessels and deep space exploration missions. In reality, they were the first phase of humanity's true space expansion program. Captain Morrison, the merchant captain who had received that first distress call months ago, was recruited for one of these missions. His new ship looked like a standard cargo hauler, but its holds contained military-grade sensors and stealth communication equipment. His mission was simple: map every hegemony patrol route, base location, and defensive installation within 50 light-years of Earth. "Remember," his briefing officer had told him, "we're still the primitive species that needs protection. Act grateful for any help, scared of any threats, and completely harmless in every situation." Morrison understood. Humanity was still playing the role of the weak, dependent species while secretly preparing for something much larger. But every pirate attack, every stolen asteroid belt, every dismissive response from their supposed protectors was adding fuel to a fire that burned brighter each day. In the hidden military facilities scattered throughout the outer solar system, Admiral Stone watched the intelligence reports flowing in from across the galaxy. The hegemony was powerful, but they were also overconfident and spread thin. Their alliance was based on fear and intimidation rather than loyalty or shared values. Most importantly, they had no idea that the primitive species they had decided to protect was actually studying them, learning their weaknesses, and preparing for the day when politeness would no longer be required. That day was coming sooner than anyone expected. The breaking point, Dr. Sarah Chen's hands were covered in blood as she knelt beside the wounded researcher in the twisted wreckage of Station Kepler. The attack had come without warning. 3 hegemony warships appearing out of hyperspace and opening fire on the research facility before anyone could even send a distress signal. "How many?" she whispered to Commander Torres, who was coordinating rescue efforts in the destroyed habitat ring. 3,000 dead, confirmed, Torres replied, his voice hollow. "Another 800 missing, probably vented into space when the hull breached. We've got maybe 400 survivors and half of them won't make it without immediate medical attention." Sarah closed her eyes and tried to process the numbers. Station Kepler had been humanity's most advanced deep space research facility, built in the empty void between star systems to study dark matter and exotic physics. It had housed families, children, some of Earth's brightest scientists. Now it was a graveyard floating in the darkness. The attack had been deliberate and thorough. The hegemony ships had targeted life support systems first, then communications, then the escape pods. They had wanted to make sure no one survived to tell what really happened here. But they had made one mistake. Dr. Chen was still alive, and she had seen everything. The lead hegemony ship had been commanded by High Commander Vexcar himself, the same alien who had negotiated Earth's protection treaty. Before opening fire, he had broadcast a message claiming that the human station was trespassing in restricted space and interfering with classified hegemony operations. It was a complete lie. Station Kepler was built in empty void, light years, from any claimed territory. The nearest star systems belonged to Earth under the original protection agreement. The station's research was completely peaceful, focused on basic physics rather than military applications. Sarah knew the real reason for the attack. 3 days ago, Station Kepler had detected massive energy signatures moving through nearby space. The signatures were unlike anything in known hegemony technology, suggesting the existence of other major powers that the aliens had never mentioned. Dr. Yamamoto, the station's chief scientist, had been preparing a report on the discovery when the attack came. The hegemony had destroyed Station Kepler to keep humanity from learning that their protectors weren't the strongest force in the galaxy. When the rescue ships finally arrived from Earth, Sarah was among the survivors evacuated to Luna Station for medical treatment and debriefing. The news of the attack sent shockwaves through human space, but the official response was measured and diplomatic. President Jackson called for a full investigation and demanded justice for the victims. The hegemony's reply was swift and dismissive. High Commander Vexcar appeared on communication screens throughout Earth's government buildings, his scaled face showing no emotion as he delivered his explanation. The human research facility was constructed in violation of galactic safety protocols, he stated. Their experiments with exotic matter posed a significant risk to nearby star systems. When they refused orders to shut down their dangerous research, military action became necessary to protect civilian populations. Ambassador Warren's jaw dropped. That's completely false. Station Kepler was studying natural phenomena, not conducting dangerous experiments. And you never issued any warnings or shutdown orders. Vexcar's expression didn't change. The hegemony is not required to justify protective actions taken on behalf of galactic security. However, we acknowledge that human losses were regrettable. As compensation for this unfortunate incident, the hegemony is prepared to offer reparations in the amount of 50,000 credits. The silence in the communication chamber was deafening. 50,000 credits was less than the cost of a single shuttlecraft. It was an insult so profound that even seasoned diplomats struggled to find words. 3,000 people died, Warren said quietly. Families, children, researchers who devoted their lives to expanding human knowledge, and you're offering 50,000 credits? The amount is generous considering the circumstances, Vexcar replied. These humans were engaged in unauthorized activities in potentially dangerous space. Their deaths, while unfortunate, were the result of their own poor judgment. Warren looked around the chamber at the faces of Earth's leadership. She saw rage, disgust, and something else. Something that looked like relief, as if a difficult decision had finally been made for them. High Commander, Warren said carefully, humanity appreciates the hegemony's offer. However, we feel that this incident requires a more substantial response. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss additional compensation and future prevention measures. Vexcar's laugh was the same grinding sound Sarah remembered from first contact. Additional compensation? Prevention measures? Ambassador, I think you misunderstand the situation. The hegemony has offered what it considers appropriate. Your species would be wise to accept our generosity and learn from this experience. And, if we don't accept, the alien's eyes narrowed, then you will learn that the galaxy is a dangerous place for species without proper protection. Pirates, raiders, hostile governments. Many things could happen to a small, isolated world like Earth. The threat was clear and unmistakable. Accept the insult or face the consequences. Warren nodded slowly. I understand your position, High Commander. However, I'm not authorized to make such important decisions without consulting with Earth's leadership. Could you give us 48 hours to consider your offer? Vexcar made a dismissive gesture. Very well. 48 hours. But do not mistake our patience for weakness, humans. The hegemony's generosity has limits. The communication ended, leaving the chamber in tense silence. President Jackson was the first to speak. 48 hours, he said quietly. That should be enough time. Warren understood. 48 hours to prepare for what came next. Across Earth and throughout the hidden military installations in the outer solar system, the machinery of war began to move. Admiral Stone's stealth fleets received their final pre-deployment orders. Deep space reconnaissance units reported to their assigned positions. The massive shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt accelerated production schedules that had been in development for 2 years. But the most important preparation was diplomatic. Earth's final message to the galactic hegemony had to be perfect. It needed to be clear, unambiguous, and properly witnessed by every major power in the galaxy. 47 hours and 30 minutes after Vexcar's ultimatum, Ambassador Warren requested an emergency session with the Hegemony High Council. The meeting was broadcast across galactic communication networks, ensuring that every species in known space would hear Earth's response. Warren stood alone before the assembled might of the galactic hegemony. Dozens of alien species were represented. In the vast chamber, from the towering Kethvar to the insectoid Zephyrians, all of them watched with the same expression of bored amusement as the human ambassador prepared to deliver her species' surrender. Honored members of the Hegemony Council, Warren began, her voice steady and clear. Over the past 8 months, humanity has attempted to resolve our differences through peaceful negotiation and diplomatic channels. We have filed formal complaints about pirate attacks on our shipping. We have protested the seizure of territory that was rightfully ours, under our protection agreement. We have requested assistance in recovering our citizens who were kidnapped and sold into slavery. Murmurs of amusement rippled through the chamber. The aliens had heard these complaints before. Warren's voice grew stronger. In each case, our concerns were dismissed, ignored, or met with responses that showed complete disregard for human rights and dignity. 3 days ago, your forces murdered 3,000 innocent civilians, including children, and your government has offered what amounts to pocket change as compensation for their lives. High Commander Vexcar leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador, we are not here to listen to accusations. Present your government's decision regarding our generous offer. Warren looked directly into the cameras broadcasting across the galaxy. We have tried to resolve this peacefully. We have been patient. We have been polite. We have followed every diplomatic protocol and treaty obligation. But our patience has limits. She paused, letting her words sink in. Consider this our last warning. The galaxy will see what happens when humanity is no longer polite. The chamber erupted in laughter. Even Vexcar seemed amused by what he clearly saw as an empty threat from a powerless species. Warren didn't smile. She simply turned and walked away, leaving behind a galaxy that had no idea what was about to happen. 48 hours had passed. Now it was time for the real Earth to introduce itself to the galaxy. The true nature of humanity. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the countdown timer reach 0. Around her, the massive command dreadnought hummed with barely contained power, its stealth systems finally disengaging after 2 years of hidden operation. All fleets report ready, Admiral, her communications officer announced. Stone nodded. Execute Operation Revelation. Show them what we really are. Across 73 different star systems, the darkness of space suddenly blazed with light, as humanity's true fleet decloaked. Ships appeared where empty void had been moments before, their hulls gleaming with armor that could withstand planetary bombardment, their weapon arrays charged and ready for battle. The galactic hegemonies, monitoring stations went silent as their operators stared in disbelief at their sensors. Where they expected to see a few dozen primitive human vessels scattered across local space, their screens now showed thousands of warships arranged in perfect battle formations. On Hegemony Prime, High Commander Vexcar was enjoying his evening meal when his aide burst into his private chambers, trembling with panic. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," the aide gasped, activating a holographic display that filled the room with tactical readouts. Vexcar set down his drink and studied the information with growing confusion, then alarm, then something approaching, terror. The display showed human battle fleets positioned throughout hegemony space, each one larger and more advanced than anything in their military databases. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence reports showed they had no military capacity beyond system patrol boats." "Sir," the aide said quietly, "our intelligence was wrong. The truth was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humanity hadn't been hiding a small defensive force. They had been concealing an interstellar military that dwarfed anything the hegemony could field. The species that seemed confined to one world had secretly colonized hundreds of systems, built massive industrial complexes in the void between stars, and constructed a war machine that had been preparing for this moment since first contact. Commander Sarah Kim, no longer pretending to study cosmic radiation, watched from the bridge of the dreadnought Defiance as hegemony patrol ships scrambled, to respond to the impossible sight of human fleets appearing in their territory. Incoming transmission from Hegemony Patrol Group Delta 7, her communications officer reported. They're demanding to know our intentions. Sarah smiled coldly. Tell them we're here to discuss diplomatic relations, just like they taught us. The Hegemony patrol ships were sleek, advanced vessels that had intimidated dozens of species into submission. But next to the human dreadnoughts, they looked like children's toys. The UES Defiance alone was 3 times larger than a Hegemony battlecruiser, its hull bristling with weapons that represented technological advances the aliens couldn't even begin to understand. Admiral Stone sends her compliments, Sarah's tactical officer reported. Operation Lighthouse is commencing. Across human space, massive installations that had been disguised as mining platforms or research stations began powering up systems that had nothing to do with civilian purposes. The asteroid processing facility in the belt revealed itself to be a shipyard capable of building dreadnought-class vessels. The Deep Space Telescope beyond Pluto's orbit was actually a surveillance network that had been monitoring every alien movement for 2 years. Most shocking of all, the neutron star research stations that humans had established in distant systems weren't studying stellar phenomena. They were harvesting exotic matter for weapons that could crack planets or ignite stars. Captain Morrison, the former merchant trader, stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser New Shanghai and marveled at how completely they had fooled the galaxy. His ship had been conducting trade missions throughout Hegemony space for months, mapping their defenses and identifying strategic targets. The aliens had welcomed him warmly, seeing no threat in a simple human cargo hauler. They couldn't see the military-grade sensors hidden in his cargo holds, the stealth communication arrays built into his hull, or the fact that his entire crew consisted of intelligence specialists and special forces operators. Captain, his tactical officer called out, we're receiving surrender requests from the Zelani Republic fleet. Morrison checked his displays. The Zelani, the species that had stolen humanity's asteroid mining operation, had sent their entire military to challenge what they thought was a small human patrol group. Instead, they found themselves facing a battle fleet that could reduce their homeworld to rubble within hours. Tell them we'll accept their surrender after they return all property stolen from human colonies, Morrison replied. With interest. Revelations were spreading across galactic communication networks faster than light travel. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive were watching in stunned silence as human fleets demonstrated technologies that shouldn't exist. Weapons that fired concentrated gravity waves, ships that could phase shift through solid matter, energy shields that absorbed and redirected incoming attacks rather than simply stopping them. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Admiral Stone received reports from across the galaxy. Not a single shot had been fired, but the balance of power had shifted completely in less than 6 hours. Status report, she ordered. All 73 target systems secured, her operations officer reported. Hegemony fleets are standing down pending negotiations. The Vorthon Collective has requested emergency diplomatic communications. 3 minor species have formally requested Earth's protection. And, sir, we're receiving surrender offers from over 24 different governments. Stone nodded grimly. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid, but the Hegemony had forced their hand. Open a channel to all Hegemony command stations, she ordered. It's time to explain the situation to our former protectors. The transmission reached every major population center in Hegemony space simultaneously. Admiral Stone appeared on countless screens, her uniform displaying the insignia of the United Earth Navy, a military organization that officially hadn't existed until this morning. People of the galaxy, she began. My name is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the Earth Defense Force. For the past 2 years, humanity has been the target of systematic oppression, theft, and murder by the so-called Galactic Hegemony and its member species. We attempted to resolve these issues through diplomatic means, but our efforts were met with contempt, dismissal, and ultimately violence. The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in across thousands of worlds. Today, we want to make something clear to the galaxy. When humanity first made contact with the Hegemony, We chose to present ourselves as a peaceful, primitive species in the hope that we could coexist without conflict. We were not weak. We were not primitive. We were being polite. She gestured, and the transmission split to show tactical displays of human fleets positioned throughout hegemony space. We have been watching. We have been learning. We have been preparing. The galaxy assumed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war. The galaxy assumed that because we seemed weak, we had no strength. The galaxy assumed that because we asked for protection, we needed protection. Stone's expression hardened. The galaxy was wrong. We were only being polite. Until now. As if to emphasize her point, the human fleet in the Rigel system powered up weapons that made the local star flicker with resonance waves. It was a demonstration of power that sent a clear message. Humanity possessed technology that could affect stellar bodies themselves. Effective immediately, Stone continued, the galactic hegemony will return all territories stolen from humanity and its allies. All human citizens held in slavery will be freed and returned to Earth space. Reparations will be paid for every act of piracy, theft, and murder committed against human interests. She leaned forward slightly. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is a statement of fact. The era of galactic bullying is over. There is a new power in the galaxy now, and we will not tolerate the oppression of any species by any government. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Within hours, the surrender documents began arriving at Earth's diplomatic offices. The galactic hegemony, which had ruled through fear and intimidation for over a century, had been completely neutralized without firing a shot. But Admiral Stone knew this was only the beginning. Revealing humanity's true capabilities had been necessary, but it had also painted a target on Earth that every hostile power in the galaxy would eventually try to hit. The galaxy thought it had seen everything humanity could do. They were about to learn they had only seen the warm-up. Polite no more. 6 months after the revelation, President Jackson stood before the assembled representatives of 47 different species in what had once been the Hegemony Council chambers. The massive hall had been redesigned, with the elevated, throne-like seats of the former hegemony replaced by a circular arrangement that put every species on equal footing. The changes were more than symbolic. The galaxy operated under new rules now, and those rules were enforced by the quiet presence of human peacekeeping fleets in every major star system. The Draconic Imperium has formally requested mediation in their territorial dispute with the Crystal Collective, announced Secretary General Martinez, who now served as humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. Both sides have agreed to binding arbitration under the Sol Accords. Jackson nodded. The Sol Accords were humanity's gift to the galaxy, a comprehensive framework for interstellar law based on principles that seemed revolutionary to species accustomed to rule by strength. The concepts of equal representation, protected rights, and peaceful conflict resolution had been met with skepticism at first, but results spoke louder than theory. In the 6 months since humanity revealed its true capabilities, not a single interstellar war had been fought. Pirates had virtually disappeared from major shipping lanes. The slave markets that had operated openly under hegemony protection had been shut down, their operators facing justice in human courts. High Commander Vex Carr, once the terror of dozens of species, now served as a junior administrator in the refugee relocation program, helping displaced populations find new homes on worlds that humanity had designated as protected sanctuaries. His transformation from galactic overlord to civil servant was perhaps the most visible symbol of how completely the balance of power had shifted. Status report on the Hegemony Integration Program? Jackson asked. Admiral Stone, now serving as Secretary of Galactic Defense, consulted her tablet. Proceeding ahead of schedule, former hegemony military forces are being retrained for peacekeeping operations. We've had volunteers from every member species for the new Interspecies Defense Corps. The integration had been humanity's most challenging task. Simply defeating the hegemony would have created a power vacuum that could have led to chaos and civil war across the galaxy. Instead, Earth had chosen the much harder path of reform and reconstruction. Hegemony worlds were not conquered or occupied. Their governments were restructured with human advisors helping to establish democratic institutions. Their economies were rebuilt around trade and cooperation rather than tribute and exploitation. Most importantly, their military forces were retrained and redeployed as peacekeepers rather than oppressors. The Zelani Republic has completed its reparations payments to human colonies, Martinez reported. They've also requested permission to establish a cultural exchange program with Earth. Jackson smiled at that. The Zelani, who had stolen human territory and laughed at diplomatic protests, were now eager to learn from the species they had once dismissed. Their ambassador had spent weeks studying human history, trying to understand how a civilization could become so powerful while maintaining democratic values. The answer, Jackson knew, lay in humanity's greatest strength, their ability to learn from mistakes and adapt to new challenges. Every human defeat had become a lesson. Every setback had become preparation for eventual victory. Captain Morrison, now commanding the diplomatic vessel Harmony, submitted his report from the Outer Rim territories where he was overseeing humanitarian operations. The ship that bore the same name as the passenger liner destroyed by pirates now carried medical supplies, teachers and engineers to worlds that had never known peace or prosperity under hegemony rule. The Vorthon Collective has formally requested membership in the Terran Alliance, Morrison reported via quantum communication link. They're offering full access to their technological databases and military intelligence. The Vorthon Collective had been the hegemony's greatest rival, a military power that could have challenged human forces if they had chosen to fight. Instead, they had studied humanity's methods and decided that cooperation offered better long-term benefits than conflict. It was a pattern that had repeated across the galaxy. Species that could have been enemies had become allies after witnessing how humanity treated both its friends and its former foes. Dr. Sarah Chen, now director of interspecies research, had established medical centers on dozens of worlds where advanced human technology was used to cure diseases and heal injuries that had been considered incurable. The same species that had once paid tribute to avoid destruction now received free healthcare and education as part of humanity's commitment to galactic welfare. There is one concerning development, Admiral Stone reported. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim. Something is out there, and it's bigger than anything we've encountered before. Jackson studied the tactical displays with interest rather than concern. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy by demonstrating overwhelming technological superiority, but they had also shown restraint, mercy, and genuine interest in the welfare of other species. If new threats emerged from beyond known space, they would face not just human forces but an alliance of dozens of species united by shared values rather than fear. Recommendations? He asked. Continue building our alliance networks, Stone replied. Whatever is out there, we'll face it together rather than alone. The galaxy is stronger now than it was under hegemony rule. As the council session concluded, Jackson reflected on how far humanity had come. 2 years ago, Earth had been a single world under the protection of alien overlords. Today, it was the center of an interstellar alliance that spanned thousands of worlds and dozens of species. The transformation hadn't been achieved through conquest or intimidation, but through something much more powerful, the demonstration that strength and morality could coexist, that powerful species could choose to protect rather than exploit, and that true leadership meant service rather than domination. In his private office after the session, Jackson received a message from Admiral Stone that made him smile. The new deep space monitoring stations had intercepted communications from a previously unknown species attempting to make contact with the galaxy. The messages were peaceful, curious, and remarkably similar to humanity's first tentative attempts at interstellar communication. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, another species was about to discover that the universe was much larger and more complex than they had imagined. They would learn about the Terran Alliance, about the principles of the Sol Accords, and about a species called humans who had chosen to use their strength to protect rather than exploit. The galaxy had learned the consequences of mistaking politeness for weakness. Now it was prospering under the guidance of a species that had turned restraint into its greatest weapon and compassion into its defining strength. Humanity was no longer being polite because they had to be. They were being polite because they chose to be. Because they had learned that true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when destruction was necessary and when mercy was stronger. The warning had been delivered, and the galaxy had listened. Now it was time to build something better than what had come before, something worthy of the species that had chosen to be guardians rather than conquerors. Outside Jackson's window, ships from dozens of different species moved through Earth's orbital traffic patterns, their crews working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The galaxy was finally at peace, not because war had become impossible, but because cooperation had become more profitable than conflict. It was a peace built on the foundation of humanity's greatest truth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose to be gentle. But never mistake that gentleness for weakness, because behind every act of human kindness stood the quiet promise that cruelty would not be tolerated, oppression would not be ignored, and evil would not be allowed to prosper. The galaxy had learned this lesson well. Those who chose cooperation found humanity to be the most generous and supportive ally they could imagine. But those who chose exploitation, oppression, or aggression learned why Earth's final warning had been so effective. We were only being polite until now.